Hello, hello, hello. What's up? And welcome to CONTY Chat. My name is Diyana. I'll be your host for today, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun because right here on the show, we talk about various topics to keep our minds fueled with knowledge and also get to know more people and their thoughts. And it's just going to be like one of the funnest things ever. So make sure you guys catch us on Saluran Berita RTM channel 123, ContyNews on Facebook and YouTube, and also follow us on all our social media sites. All right. But today we are talking about the stigma of mental health, and it is a sad situation that the stigma exists in the first place. See, now mental health in Malaysia is still, the stigma of it anyway, is still common and is seen as something quite petty even when we're already in 2022. Trust me on this, it's like one of those things that you hear on social media from keyboard warriors, people who don't really know how to react, or people who don't really understand what goes on in people's minds. So this is something that we need to learn more and discover, which is great because we actually have a psychiatrist with us today. We've got Dr. Aishah Alimuddin, and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Aishah. And also we have our celebrity guest, Zainal Alam Kadir, who's also a writer, former journalist, as well as a host, looking fabulous as always.
Ooh,
yes, so basically, this is something that we all should know for the benefit of our audience. That the National Health and Morbidity Survey in 2019 reported that half a million Malaysians were found to be experiencing symptoms of depression. That's a lot. That is a bit too much and alarming at the same time. Now, with the rising cost of living and people still struggling to find jobs at the same time, we got to figure out how can we Malaysians unite, help each other, embrace future challenges, and not just with this future's challenges, but also with what is going on in our minds currently as we speak. So again, thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Aishah, and also Alam. Yes, I'm allowed to call you that, yes? Yes, so I think to start off with, this question goes out to Dr. Aishah. Okay, so what is the situation with mental awareness amongst Malaysians?
Okay, I think the situation with the mental health awareness in Malaysia is such that we are gaining more and more awareness, definitely. I think it's partly a play of, more and more people that we know having mental health conditions, as in either illness per se or just mental health issues, right? And by us knowing more and more people, so we're talking more about it, speaking up more about it, people are being more open to talk about it. But at the same time, I think the advent of technology is also helping, the spread of the awareness. And I think the technology plays, a both, double-edged sword kind of, thing where it helps to an extent, but it also can cause certain issues along the way. So I think in Malaysia itself, we're talking about 1 in 5 or 1 in 3 people having mental health conditions. So you're looking at probably in this entire room here with 3 of us, that's going to be at least one.
I've got one. So that's 2 and 3. Actually, there's a couple our producers right there. So
right.
Three
So that's the thing. So we're looking at that many, people, and we're looking at depression per se climbing up the ladder of non-communicable disease. It's coming up a close second, right after cardiovascular disease, which is very common. So this is why we need to have more conversations definitely about this. Definitely.
Absolutely. Could not agree more, Dr. Aishah. But that is a scary thought. The fact that it's 1 in 3, 1 in 5 estimate. I mean, we're calculating right now. I'm pretty sure there might be about 6 people in here. So there's
it can be scary, but I look at it in a positive and optimistic side that more and more people are coming out and being aware of their own condition and also being more confident and comfortable to discuss this. So I look at it as a way forward rather than something very upsetting or depressing rather. So I like to think of it that way actually.
Yeah, I like that outlook. I really enjoyed Dr. Aishah. But then this to us as the normal peeps who are not professionals, doctors, experts and whatnot, right? It is rather daunting for our part. And I'm going to ask this question to Alam because you have been in the scene for, in the limelight for a long time. And
are you trying to say I'm
What? No, I'm saying
Very
that
young.
I'm saying you're a prominent figure, lah. Essentially. Yeah. So basically,
Understand.
that you have been in this, like, in the limelight for a long time, and with that comes with a great deal of stress. We want to know, what are your thoughts when it comes to mental awareness amongst Malaysians that you understand?
Firstly, if you look at everything from the current state, current point of view, I mean, it would be unfair for people my age to say that the current generation would be too weak, or they're mentally not strong, because usually that would, I mean, honestly, there was a point whenever people complain to me about certain things, like I'm depressed, I'm down, and this, and you go like, oh, come on, suck it up, you know. Or because then we have to remember the way we were brought up. During my period, it was culturally different. Your parents would teach you not to express yourself, actually. Most people are not as expressive. They would be talking about things rather to only few people, but usually they would keep everything inside. And then you have to be fair as well. Whatever problems we faced then, in the 70s or 60s, you know, when we were growing up, for the boomers, whatever, or however you want to describe it, the problems were different from what we have now. Plus, population wise, I mean,
Yep.
during when I remember when I was in secondary school, we have less than 15 million people, or maybe less than that, or maybe 8 or 9 million people. So imagine the number of problems that you have.
Yep.
And then we didn't have traffic congestion like what we're having now. We don't have like any pressure about getting any iPhone or this or whatever. So it would be unfair for people my age to judge the younger ones about whatever they're facing now. So understanding that, and then coming from that, it would be easier for you to now, I think, at least be more open to listen to the whole thing. And me, in my case, as a person who has been, I mean, so-called in the limelight, the stress is more, actually, because you don't have any off days.
Yep.
You cannot be seen depressed. You cannot be seen sad.
You have to be on all the time.
all the time. I think you know what I'm saying, and because that's what you have to do
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, yeah.
And then you might have a bad day, but somebody would just turn around and ask for a picture or something, or whatever. You just have to keep smiling. Sometimes that's when the training that I had when I was a kid,
Yep.
to suck it up, to keep
Yeah.
everything inside, don't cry out loud. Those are the things. So I think it has become a second nature, so it's easier. And then you are used to being trained about, like, if you have gone through many bad things, what would be just having no iPhone, you know, stuff like that. And then me, in my case, personally, for instance, I was sharing with you before the recording just now about me just using Nokia 3310. The reason, I had a very good, strong reason before that. I mean, for doing that, because I didn't want anyone to bother me. I'm a very private person.
Okay.
I may look very, outgoing or whatnot, but when I'm at home, I just want to be at home with
Yep.
myself, with my thoughts. So Nokia 3310 saved me all that.
Yeah, that is a very interesting observation based on by generation, and it's like the generational trauma that people experience. I think we can dive into that after this short break. So we'll be right back right here on Conty Chat.
All individuals are at risk of experiencing mental health problems, including depression. You and I included, especially if we are living in a stressful environment away from family members. But remember, if depression is not properly treated, it may lead to further harm, including suicide attempts. We can change it.
Welcome back to Conty Chat with me, Diyana Hashim, and we've got our special guest, Dr. Aishah Alimuddin, as well as Zainal Alam Kadir. And it's really interesting. We're still talking about the stigma of mental health, but earlier just now, Alam made this really interesting point about generational trauma, what people experience. now baby boomers, as what was mentioned, because this is like I'm a millennial, and then the previous one is a baby boomer. What's the one after a millennial? It's
Gen Y.
Gen Y.
It was Gen X.
X and then Y.
Yeah,
and
X
then,
and then
I'm
Y.
not
and
so
then-
sure whether I'm a boomer or X. Okay, for instance, my parents
Yeah.
were both teachers.
Yes.
They're very traditional Malay, traditional family. They came from all those very traditional family. But when they became teachers, they still have the certain level of cultural and traditional values that they would bring to their children. So they would teach us to behave, not to move, not to talk too much, not to do, all those things.
Yeah.
And then, but by the time it reached my generation, most of my people from my age, if you do well in school, if you did well in school, you'll be sent overseas.
Yes.
Right.
And you'll be exposed. And then the people around my age will be like 50 something, 60 something. They might have a different experience elsewhere.
course.
So when they come back, they bring different values as well.
true.
So when they, let's say, and I was in a boarding school. So most of my friends were from that period, went overseas, came back. They have all the same ideas. We're not going to be like our parents.
Yeah.
We're going to teach our children to be more expressive. We're going to be more. We're going to protect them more. While those days, your parents would send. My parents were teachers. They would send you to school, and they would tell the teachers, "Beat him up. Please beat him up."
Yep.
But and to a certain
And
level.
that-
But as long as they come out smart.
Yeah.
But
That's
my
happened now.
generation would
Yeah.
go to the teacher and say,
You can't hit my
touch
child."
Yeah, do not- yeah,
you
yeah.
touch my child, I bring a lawyer. And I myself am a lawyer. I'm trained in London or something like that. But then, so it got worse. So the kids got spoiled. And because of that, there was a point, when I was an editor, I would be taking in new writers and whatnot, and I would usually the first thing, of course, the proficiency in language and everything else. But you would see, and then you start, how to say it, evaluating them
Right.
mentally as well, what sort of person you
Yeah.
are, and whatnot, your background. So
Yeah.
those are the things. And when I realized the older ones are more resilient.
That's an interesting one. There has been that claim always, the baby boomers versus any generation that
Right.
comes
Yeah,
afterwards, right?
Right.
Are they weak? Are
Right.
they a bunch of weaklings because they are constantly like, I need to look for my bliss. I cannot take this
Oh,
a
yes,
stress
yes.
from 9 to 5. I need to work
Right.
from blah 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 and
Right,
all that.
right.
Correct.
So I do have that question. Is the current generation actually weak-minded compared to the previous generation, in your thoughts?
I think to answer that question, to be fair, right? Resilience, for that matter, comes with a lot of maturity, right? So as you mature, you will end up learning new coping ways, better, healthier mechanisms to manage your stress, and so on and so forth. And therefore, you become more and more resilient along the way, right?
Correct.
But I think partly what Alam shared earlier is also one of the things that we are looking at in current researches, as to why there are generational differences, why were the previous
Huge gap.
generations,
Yep.
why were the previous generations, do they appear a lot more stronger and less at stress, less anxious? Partly I agree with, the way that they were brought up, they were taught to be, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and that doesn't happen in the current generation where the newer generation parents who were actually parents of, following the baby boomers, for example, we're talking about Generation X who are now parents, right? These are the a group of people who probably had the thought that okay, I do not want my child to experience the
What I
same thing
experienced
that
when
I
I was
had
a kid,
experienced,
yes.
right? And therefore they become more protective, right? They become a lot like what we call as helicopter parents nowadays. They just hover
Helicopter
around,
parents,
right?
yeah.
This in a way makes the children have this sort of protective bubble, which is something that you want, but at the same time it's not a healthy thing.
You gotta find the right balance to it.
So
And then it
you
goes down
want to
from-
have a circle of security where the
Yeah.
child knows they can come back to you at any point of time, but you don't want to be there all the time constantly, and therefore causing them to constantly depend on you,
Sure.
rather.
It's the boomer's fault. No, I'm kidding.
But they all did say everything is the boomer. So no, so bad lah.
So I think that's one angle of it, and I think with the advent of technology, like I mentioned
Correct.
way earlier, right? A lot of expectations, are set on the social media, on the net, and people are just sharing things, and people start comparing. Oh, I must have this. I must do it this way. This is the standard, right? You can't be,
And then-
dark. You have to be fair. You can't be bigger on the side of your body shape. You have to be on the thinner side, and so on and so forth. The education, you have to have a degree from this university as opposed to that, right? And I think all these standards that people set are the sort of thing that makes the children, they have a single mind. They are only directed towards that, and if I do not get that, I'm a failure. I am
True.
not good enough.
It's
right.
It's the next level of like keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
Because back then, keeping up with the Joneses is just a smaller nucleus of like, oh yeah, my auntie's friend
And if you're
is
talking
like,
about stress level, I mean, those days we have bigger houses, bigger rooms, bigger this, bigger space, bigger that. You don't have that many. You didn't have that many cars then, so you didn't. There's not much of a problem. I mean, I
The
never
higher
heard-
cost of
Yeah,
living
yeah,
I never
nowadays,
heard of
right?
any apa, road rage in the
Road rage
70s.
driving, yeah.
But this today, and then thanks to the advent of technology,
Viral,
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
goes
every
viral.
single day you get to see somebody,
Yes, correct.
lepuking somebody, somebody.
Exactly.
You know.
So I guess the stress and anxiety comes with that, right? Because people are just constantly required to be performing. Being prim and proper, like that's expected. Like what Ala mentioned just now, right? Just because I'm the face of a show, for example, I have to always be, at that level.
Yeah,
I can't
true.
show the other side, which I like to disagree with, actually. Showing the other side, the human side of a person is actually required nowadays, rather than just
Absolutely.
being perfect.
Yeah.
I think
But
that
sometimes-
will help along the way with the resilience and lesser stress and anxiety as well.
But sometimes people like me would be like more like it's something that you are used to.
True.
It becomes, as I said, second
Agreed,
nature.
yeah.
But at the same time, when you go back and like, oh God.
It's so exhausting.
What just happened?
Yeah.
What happened just now?
Keeping up the facade,
Yeah.
of how you
that's
have
the word.
always
Correct.
been raised to do.
What I loved when I first started seeing my psychiatrist, and I'm totally open with this factor, simply because in any way we can get help, we should.
Yes.
One of the things that I liked was that he had said, you got to consider how you set your boundaries rather than just like totally disregarding or discarding anything and everything that is what is considered negative energy. There's toxic positivity as well. So you have to just say, this is something that I know I can handle, so it's going to be okay. I'm not going to, make a big fuss out of it. So that should build that
and
sense
being
of
able to say
resilience.
no as well
Yes,
at times.
And
you
that's
know?
also
Not
interesting.
saying yes
When
to
you say
everything.
you have a a psychiatrist to go to.
Yep.
In the 70s
Yes.
or in the 80s, for instance, if you say,
I'm
if
going
you
to
say,
see a
if you say,
psychiatrist.
I'm going to Tanjung Rambutan or Tampoi. There's only two. I mean, and then it wasn't really such a career to be a psychologist as well. Then
I think at that point of time, there were other fields which required much more attention. With increasing cases, now people are seeing that this is definitely one option for a profession. But more than that, I think it has to be a passion.
I mean, I went to a science school, Sekolah Menengah Sains Johor in Keluang, and then when I decided like, fine, I might be good in science, but I'm also interested in the arts.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I chose to do art and design, for instance. And a lot of people say, are you mad? Everybody went overseas to do engineering, to be a doctor, to be a lawyer, whatever. What are you doing to your life? And then when I move on to journalism as well, people are like, what's your problem? The thing is that it was always like, not like, wow, you're doing something good, but it becomes like, what's your problem actually?
Going against the norm,
Yeah.
It's always a
because
problem.
that's, So
And then when I
so-
moved to TV, I said, what now?
Yeah.
And then when I started producing, I said, what else are you going to instead of like, wow, you're so versatile, you're doing this and this and that. But the validation from others is like also quite important. But the thing is, most of the time you're looked at as an anomaly, abomination.
Right.
Oh, that's such a word. Abomination.
No lah, don't lah be like that. That's the thing. It's
But
people,
thank God I have a good sense of humor as well. So you go like, oh.
Well, Alan,
yeah.
but you have to also understand, like in my perspective, I think you paved the way for a lot of people in the older generation. I'm gonna say this, alright? Okay,
Older
yeah,
generation.
right? So
Thank you very much.
you gotta be proud of that. You're gonna be proud of that medal, all right? So no, basically, it's just like the point of people like you who are incredibly resilient, who went through so much. Yeah.
If I can do it,
Yeah.
anybody else can. So there's
Yes.
nothing special about it. No,
It's
I'm
probably
kidding.
sometimes it's more of a personal level as well, your
True,
own
true.
personal expectations. You've achieved one level and now, okay, what next?
Yeah.
What next?
Kan
Yeah.
And just doesn't
people say
end.
that you are only as good as your last show or your
Yeah.
last appearance or your last whatever.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I always believe in that. And then sometimes even during one event, for instance, and then there'll be 10 songs, and my band will be like performing, and something might not go the way you want
Yeah.
it, and then suddenly they'll be like, it'll be like one song at a time. So each song we go better and better.
Yeah,
By then we forgot. That's how I see life. And then the word depression. The other day, a very close friend of mine died of
Sorry to
cancer,
hear that.
and then I was quite affected, but I tried not to show it at all because we were very close at one point. But a friend called me up and said, I'm so depressed, she died, I'm so depressed, I don't know, are you depressed? Kept asking me whether, then at one point I felt depressed. You know what I mean? When you kept on
Pushing
so
them.
these are among the things that
Yeah,
we have to know how to deal with.
betul. And I think I like to just follow through with that a little, right? The use of this kind of words, right? It seems very colloquial, like a normalized kind of thing, which we want that. We want people to normalize talking about emotions, right? But the right terms to be used should be used, So
Yeah,
when you
correct.
simply, throw the words like depressed or OCD,
It
for that
it
matter,
becomes
it
trendy.
minimizes the real
The real-
disorder that a
correct.
person is actually experiencing. So rather than using just simply those terms,
Yeah.
I'm sad, I'm very
Yeah,
upset,
yeah, I'm
I'm a
disappointed,
perfectionist
yeah.
rather than I'm OCD, right? So
yeah.
I think
People are
the
using
use
it
of
really,
words
it
is
becomes like a trending
yeah,
word.
so
And
and
everybody's
that
using it.
sort of
Lost
is
the meaning,
yes,
Yeah.
it loses the meaning, and it also minimizes the real true impact that the illness has on the individual who actually really is struggling
Yeah.
from it. So yeah.
This is very interesting. This unfortunately, I wish I could keep you guys all day, but when it comes to facing the stigma, what are some of the things that one could do to stay strong?
Okay. So I think in terms of stigma, it depends on which level of stigma we're talking about, right? So there are people who are they self-stigmatize themselves, and when we talk about self-stigma, we're talking about people who look at the illness as a sign of weakness, like just what Dee said just now, right? So talking about it as a sign of weakness, talking about it as I'm not good enough, and therefore as that stereotypy grows, you start to become more and more in agreement to it. So it sort of like becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where I'm not going to just try, what's the point, I'm just
Yeah.
tired, let's
Yeah.
just give this up, right? So if we're talking about self-stigma per se, I think the biggest step forward is to talk it out, right? First is, of course, being aware that you're having such an issue, and then talk it out, right? And talking nowadays, we're not talking about, putting it up online, advertising this. That's not necessary. What you need is actually just someone who you really trust, who you can actually sort of open up to and relate to and talk about this, and then take it from there. And with some sort of support, I think a lot of people will actually be able to get out of this, negative thoughts that they have. But more than self-stigma, actually, what we require is the public to, start taking steps, to speak up, advocate for people with mental health illness and conditions for that matter, not necessarily illness itself,
And
So
I have to say, people these days are luckier because they have the social media to vent,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
talk about whatever they want to
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, it becomes a danger as well
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it showed how sick a lot of people can be as
Yeah.
well. But I mean, compared to during my time, the only thing you could do if you have some deep dark secret and you just wanted somebody to talk to, no one to talk to, so you had to go to. I remember in ITM, I had these friends. ITM tau during, it's not even
yeah,
you
not your
ITM,
end,
nampak sangat tua. But so we go to, a friend of mine would have this habit of going to the public phone just to call befriender.
yeah. So
It was
having
like
this
it was
NGO
like a Catholic confession, I have this problem, but I don't want to be named, blah blah blah. I had this friend who did that, and I was like, I found it weird then, but now people.
Yeah,
As
but
I
I
said,
think
you
that
have
remains
psychiatrists,
true.
we have
That remains true right now, Alam, in that sense that I think you need to talk about it, and the
Correct.
people who are aware of the person's condition, I think they should start stepping up and speaking up for them. Taking a day off from work for mental health should not be something yang you have to think of apa alasan, what
Yeah.
is the reason
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
need to give. Should I just say that I'm having a bad tummy today, or a fever, rather than say that, I'm not feeling too good emotionally and therefore I can't come into work, right? And I think this is at multiple levels lah, at the organization level, of course at the, government level. You need more resources for us to make this possible.
But
So,
most
yeah.
importantly, now at least people are more aware.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed. That's the first step forward. I definitely
Okay.
find that good.
All right, so Dr. Aishah and Alam says, be aware of yourself. I mean, get to know yourself a little bit better. And when it comes to, identifying how one feels is incredibly crucial. Write down your actual current emotions rather than just generalizing
Brilliant.
depression or anything of the sort, because sometimes when you are able to identify it, like in my personal experience, I was unable to identify what on earth was going on in my head, but to be able to actually have a chat with my psychiatrist, and this I've seen 2 psychiatrists in my life, and my first one unfortunately moved to Penang lah, which was like super sad. But then at his when I was seeing my first psychiatrist, I actually said to him, don't diagnose me. I mean, you can diagnose me, don't tell me, because I don't want to know, because I'm still at the mindset where I think I can still handle it myself kind of situation.
Yeah.
But the second one, I said, you know what, I want to know, and let's be real here, this is what I think I am like as a person and how I feel. What is it? He's like, I can't diagnose you in like immediately one session, right? And then after that, he was like, but all in all, I think you should look into ADHD lah. And since then, like, it opened up doors for me to understand myself a lot
Correct.
better and be able to identify that. So it's really, really, God, I really wish I had more time.
Knowing is important, because at the end of the day, at least you
Yeah.
have closure
Yes.
as well. You
And
know what to do with it. You know how to manage it.
Yes, yes.
And I think one important thing to know and acknowledge is that not all emotions are there as it's wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes you're supposed to be sad in a particular situation, so you cannot over pathologize
Yeah.
that emotion
Yes,
either, right?
yes, yes.
So
Over-pathologize.
Yes.
so
Right.
you need to have a balance, so acknowledging, like DC just now, is
Yeah.
very
Yes.
very important.
Okay, so now we know this, and I wish I could keep you guys for 1,000 years over here, because there's just so much chat about. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, so thank you so much. I had Dr. Aishah Siddiqah Alimuddin and also Zainal Alam Kadir. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure with you guys right here on Conty Chat. Make sure you catch us again every weekend on Saturdays at 10:30 p.m. And you could also catch us on Salaran Berita RTM channel 123, ContyNews, Facebook and YouTube. And don't forget to follow us on all our social media accounts. So catch you the next time. See ya.